It's baffled scholars for 2 millennia. It is a puzzle made of multi-dimensional elements, an enigma with roots that reach back to the dawning of time, perhaps before. Daniel explained part of it. Ezekiel and Isaiah had glimpses into it. John saw it all for the time of the end. That time is now. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert on a journey that spans the course of history, from Eden to Mount Hermon, from Hermon to Babel, from Babel to Rome, from Rome to the cross, and from there to us. Biblical prophecy is coming true before your eyes, and to understand it, you must discern the times both then and now. It's time to unravel the threads of this all-encompassing prophetic paradox. It's time to unravel Revelation. The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Welcome to Unraveling Revelation. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we are in our home. We were at the Baker Show last weekend. We were there on Tuesday, got iced in, couldn't make it home on Wednesday. Turned out that Thursday morning, as we were about to leave, they asked us if we would stay because Carl Gallups could not leave Pensacola because of flooding down there. So there have been some epic meteorological events taking place. But more than that, in the world, which is why we're in home, in the world there are things taking place that have to do, I believe, with the four riders of the apocalypse.
Right.
And that is why we're going to sort of have a special Unraveling Revelation. And, well, hi, Sam. It isn't going to be in order. In other words, it's not the next few verses. We're going to skip right over to chapter 6 today and discuss the seals.
Yes.
We will cover them again when we go back to doing things in order, but just this is a standalone program discussing primarily the effects these writers have on our world.
Right. We're, of course, in the middle of, we had been in the middle of chapter 4, and so we're jumping ahead. But this is because of the situation that's emerged from China over the last few weeks. The coronavirus outbreak, we think is serious enough to pay attention to and analyze through a prophetic lens, which is why we're doing this now, because it's very top of mind as the media is finally paying attention to this here in America.
It took them several weeks.
Sure, we've been so focused on the impeachment process with President Trump, followed by the State of the Union address, which preceded the vote
Which was
in the
the
Senate.
best ever, the best ever State of the Union address.
So this has been something that the American media, which we tend to be very provincial anyway. Here in America, we don't pay enough attention to what's going on around the world. And many experts or self-proclaimed experts have been saying, well, this is no different than the SARS outbreak in China 2002, 2003.
No.
We direct you to Sci Friday, our Sci Friday broadcast this week to get more details on that. But the bottom line is, no, it's not. This is different.
Yeah, this is very different.
So
chapter 6.
Revelation chapter 6 begins this way.
English Standard Version, by the way.
Now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures, those are the cherubim,
Yes. Those
say with
big dudes that we talked about last week.
Right. Say with a voice like thunder, "Come!" And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer.
I'm going to stop you there for a minute. In the King James Version, it's not just come, it's come and see. And I think it's really important that we get that idea that John is moving to another location in this space around the throne, and he is told to look. What he beholds is, we're briefly going to discuss these first 3 riders and then primarily focus on the 4th rider. But the first rider, I think, is very important because he seems to be in charge.
Right.
And I think you have a theory as to who this may be.
Well, yes.
Because these are all entities.
Right. One thing I want to mention first is that because he's on a white horse, there are some who think that this represents Christ himself, but no.
No.
The crown that he's given, and we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, the difference in the types of crowns. He is not given a diadem, which is a royal crown.
Right.
He's given a Stephanos, a crown of victory. So he's given a crown that allows him to claim victory over the nations for a time. But this is not Christ. This is a pale imitation of Christ.
He's allowed by the Lord to think himself a victor.
Yes. And the bow, I think, is a hint that what we're looking at here is the ancient god worshipped in the Middle East, we know for at least 1,000 years before the Exodus, called Resheph, who was depicted as a horse, a horseman, a charioteer, but also an archer who spread plague and pestilence, which is why we think there's a connection here to the fourth rider.
Exactly.
With his arrows. Resheph was known as Nergal in Babylon, but he was also known to the Greeks and Romans as Apollo.
Yes, and the great sword that he is given, that Greek word is toxon, from which we get toxin. So it's this hint that there's poison in this arcing, bow and arrow.
Right. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword.
Yes, really briefly, why are they riding horses? Can't they get here without horses? The first century believers were aware of the pagan belief that in order to cross from one realm to our material space, from the unseen realm to this realm, you needed to have a horse or a chariot pulled by a horse.
Similar to the Greek belief that you crossed the river Styx with the ferryman who crossed, took you across the river. Similar concept. But what's kind of neat though is that if you've got a pet who has gone on, as we can see in prophecy that there are horses in the spirit realm. Jesus comes back riding a horse, so horses in heaven, why not dogs?
We may all be on horses. Yeah. I love it. I think dogs are up there. I do.
But we believe that these first two riders have been out riding since the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
I think so too, because up until this, and again, we will study this at length once we get to it in order, we see that the Lord has arrived in heaven. The scroll is shown, and there is wailing because who is worthy? The Lord is the only one worthy to open the scroll. He appears as a lamb that has been slain. In other words, I think there's a strong hint that this is the very moment after his ascension. So as soon as he gets up there, he starts claiming his birthright.
Yeah.
He is the one who is the only one worthy to open this will and testament that gives him access to take back our land.
And we can certainly look at history and see that this world has never been peaceful or free from famine, plague, pestilence, and war, that kind of thing. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And the word translated scales can also mean a yoke.
Yes, exactly. It can mean fascism.
Right, like what you place on an ox to keep it under control. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius." Why is this significant? Because the denarius was equal to 1 full day's pay. So think about that. A quart of wheat to make your bread for an entire day's worth of work.
You work the whole day long, and all you get is that's how it was back in the day. The slaves or the laborers would work the whole day. At the end, they would be, here's your little bowl of grain.
Right. And 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine. The rich get richer while the poor
get poorer.
Right.
Exactly.
And this, I think, is something that relates to what we're doing, but again, what we're talking about today. But again, we want to focus on the fourth rider. I just will point this out. The Chinese economy right now is about 17% of the world's gross domestic product is Chinese economic activity. But right now, because of the coronavirus outbreak, according to a financial expert writing for the Telegraph, Ambrose Evans Pritchard, 80% of China's factory output right now is shut down as China tries to contain the spread of the virus. 90% of its export manufacturing is shut down. So car parts, Hyundai, 5th largest automaker in the world, has shut down all of its factories because it can't get the parts it needs to make its cars.
Right.
Kia is in the same boat, other automakers in Japan that depend on China for raw materials and parts.
Ingredients to go into our medicines, vaccines.
iPhones, Foxconn shut down.
Yes, and it probably will not reopen within the very short period of time. I
Right.
think these are going to stay shuttered for a while.
We're looking at a contraction of the Chinese economy, and these estimates are based on China reopening factories within the next week or two, which is highly unlikely. So,
No, probably not.
Yeah.
At this point, there are 400 million people in quarantine. By the time this goes up on Monday, because we're recording this on Saturday morning, it's very likely that there will be more under quarantine.
Right.
As of today, about 35,000 confirmed cases, and those numbers can vary. And you watch Sci Friday, you'll see we talk about that. But I would say by the time this airs on Monday, that number will probably be more like 45,000.
think about this in terms of the number at quarantine. The entire populations of the United States and the United Kingdom under quarantine.
And oh my goodness, that really puts it into perspective.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here.
By having these things take place, the government is coming in and they are forcing people to do things. In other words, it's not just famine, it's not just that the economy is hurt, it's also fascism.
Yeah.
The ability to control what people can and cannot do. There are CCTVs all over China. There's facial recognition software. Everybody has to use the same social media platforms. And so people are being hunted down and arrested.
This is what prophecy watchmen have been talking about for a long time. The beast system, we're seeing a microcosm of it in China right now, where people are being pulled off trains because their face has been recognized on a CCTV camera. Hey, you're supposed to be under quarantine at home.
Exactly.
Get off the train.
And it also recognizes the people around that person. And so they go and they take those people and they put them, so make sure that you don't, be around because you may have been infected.
Right. So this is a glimpse into the future. What we're seeing in China right now, and what's really disturbing is that the majority, it seems, of the Chinese population is okay with this because they're afraid of getting sick, and they want Big Brother letting them know by text message, hey, there's somebody on the train with you who's possibly infected.
Yes.
This is,
And
like
they're starting
I said,
to report on one another.
Doesn't take a lot of imagination to see how this would be useful to a one world government controlled by the Antichrist.
It does not. We're going to take a quick break,
Yes.
come back, and we're going to talk about that fourth rider.
Unraveling Revelation continues after this.
Near-death experiences and extraordinary accounts of angelic intervention as told by those who experience them. It's time to comprehend these often chilling, intimidating, and sometimes completely misunderstood subjects. Skywatch TV is proud to announce the Life After Death official collection. In this incredible collection, you'll receive the brand new book by Donna Howell and Allie Anderson Henson, Encounters, where you'll learn whether holy angels can default from God's army, have wings, or read our minds. The biblical answer to whether we should attempt to beckon angels to carry out our requests or seek them out as spirit guides. You'll also learn about the fierce capacity of angels, their strength in spiritual warfare, and ability to operate in the physical world to carry out God's prophetic will. All this and so much more. You'll also receive the brand new book by Donna Howell, Allie Anderson Henson, and Josh Peck, Afterlife, where you'll discover for the first time real-life stories of near-death and out-of-body experiences as told by those who experience them. What scientists say about evidence of life in the beyond. Surprising implications made through the Shroud of Turin, and tackles tough questions like, if God is such a loving God, why does he send people to hell for all of eternity? This masterpiece collection also includes the incredible DVD Beyond Supernatural, which features stunning off-the-record interviews with Josh Peck and Stephen Bancars detailing their long history of involvement in the New Age and their personal testimonies of deliverance by Jesus Christ. All that and more on this original Skywatch TV 5-part series on DVD that exposes the infiltration of the New Age. But that's not all. This powerhouse collection also includes the popular audio series Doctrines of Devils. Listen as Stephen Bancars interviews Doreen Virtue, world-renowned former best-selling author and teacher for the New Age, as she explains her incredible supernatural journey out of the occult and into the arms of Jesus. This over 12-hour series features bonus interviews with Dr. Chuck Missler, Dr. Thomas Horn, John McTernan, Gary Bates, and many more on the subjects of ghosts, demons, and the supernatural. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of $110. Yours now for your donation of only $35 plus shipping and handling. Someone you know is asking questions right now about the afterlife. Everything you need to know is explained in the Life After Death official collection. Available now at skywatchtvstore.com. Order now or call 1-844-750-4985.
Welcome back to Unraveling Revelation from Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and today's topic is, very, very, very serious. We have skipped ahead, and we're talking about the four riders. We've discussed the first three, and they all work in tandem. I believe that they started riding when the Lord ascended, and their effects on the world have been punctuated. You'll have a time when it's really strong, and then they sort of disappear for a while. They go over here to another part of the world and they ride for a while. I think now they're riding worldwide, and their hoofbeats are getting louder and louder and louder.
Right.
The effects on the world are just like birth pangs when a woman is about to give birth. That's how Jesus described it. Rider number 4.
Revelation 6, beginning at verse 7. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And
Sickly green.
Yeah, chloros. And its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. Now, Death, the name there in Greek is Thanatos.
He's actually given a name, which I think is a hint. All these other riders have names too. They're entities using these horses to cross from one domain to another.
Rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. And they were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword and with famine and with pestilence and by the wild beasts of the earth.
Exactly.
Now, this is really interesting. This verse where what verse is that?
Verse 7.
8. Verse 8.
Oh,
To
sorry.
kill with sword, famine, pestilence. The word pestilence is, again, Thanatos, which is interesting because it's
And
this
in the
time,
KJV, it's translated "and with death."
yeah, the curse of fatal death.
I know.
Yeah. But the wild beasts of the earth. This you did a presentation at the Prophecy Conference in Colorado Springs
Yeah, it
about
was
5
a
years ago
long
on
time
this,
ago.
where beasts, Thanatos and Therion. Therion is the word translated beasts.
It's
but
a diminutive.
Right.
It's implying that these are smaller beasts, and yes, it still could be dogs and cats. Dogs and cats.
civets and
Civets.
bats.
But these are small creatures that, through the process of that's called zoonosis, they can transfer their inbred and resident microbes to humans. That happens all the time in avian influenza. We catch it from birds and pigs. The birds have caught it, given it to the pigs give it to the humans. By the way, right now in China, H5N1, which is an avian flu that is transmissible to humans, has been discovered on a number of chicken farms, and so many, many thousands of birds have been killed or who have died. Many of the flocks, half the flock is dead by the time they find it out. Also, H9, which is probably H9N2, has been found in a child. He has tested positive for it. Again, that is highly pathogenic, and it is easily transmissible from animal to human. It eventually, H9N2 will eventually be very transmissible, I believe, from human to human. For now, it's not, but it's deadly. It is very, very deadly disease. But these are the things that Thanatos and his buddy Hades, which is another entity, sometimes called Pluto. Sometimes, who would he be in the Sumerian?
Well, in the Amorite context, the Amorite religion, or Canaanite, if you will, that was Mot. In Hebrew, it's Maweth.
Wait, that would be
Slightly
death,
different
though.
pronunciation, but that is, he was the god of death.
He was the
god of the underworld.
ruler of the underworld.
Right, the ruler of the underworld, or the gatekeeper to the underworld.
And that's really important, the gatekeeper, because Thanatos in the Greek religion was one of twins, Thanatos and his brother Hypnos,
Right.
as we get hypnosis. Hypnos, the good brother, would take you to sleep if you were a good person and you were going to go on to, the Elysian fields when everything was done. But Thanatos took you to Hades. That's why he and Hades work hand in hand. So when he is coming, he's bringing all his old buddies with him.
There wasn't in the Canaanite religion a direct cognate for Hades, because Hades was a place, but it was also an entity. In the Canaanite religion, you had a god of death who would equate with Thanatos, and that was Mot, who
had an insatiable appetite.
Insatiable appetite. We see references to that. In was it Hosea? Death, where is thy victory? Death, where is thy sting?
Yes, exactly.
Because God has swallowed up.
Grave, where is thy victory? Death, where is thy sting?
Right,
or something
right.
Like that.
And we see that cited by Paul in the New Testament, where God has swallowed up death in victory. That's a reference back to this Canaanite god of death.
That was so hungry it would have swallowed up everything.
Yeah, one looked to the earth and the other to the stars. So, but the gatekeeper, Apollyon, Resheph, Nergal, was the gatekeeper to the underworld. And interestingly, in Revelation, John describes him as the king over those in the abyss.
Exactly. Now, when we unpack this very, very slowly as we go back to our normal schedule, we will discuss the idea of a gatekeeper and Apollo and how these sections may well be the outline of what occurs during the 7-year tribulation period. So if you think of it that way, the idea, this may be the point where Apollo unlocks, being a gatekeeper, unlocks all of his buddies, the Titans.
Midpoint, huh?
Well, possibly. I think that's probably when it. But we're going to study this more because they're given 150 days. These watchers who are let loose from the abyss, they're given 150 days to torment mankind.
Right.
That hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So I think because we're seeing the effects of the riders, I think again, 1 through 4, all of these seals, I believe that they were opened when Christ arrived in heaven, and there's still their effects. I don't believe he's opened the 5th seal yet. And if he has, what you might say the effects of that are ongoing as well, because there comes a point when all of the souls who have died because of these riders are under the altar and they cry to God, how long are you going to let this go on?
Right.
Without avenging us?
And some friends of ours have made a good case that we are leading up to the 6th seal, which is when there's a great earthquake, the sun becomes black as sackcloth, the moon becomes like blood. So, in fact, Peter Goodgame, friend who wrote the book Red Moon Rising some years back.
Also, Earthquake Resurrection.
By David W. Lowe.
Yeah, exactly. Great book.
Right. Which argues that these seals have been open. And I think you can make a good case for that, because in the context of the 4th seal, there have been plagues that have ravaged the earth for as long as humans have been around.
Yes.
I mean, we look at, we've been doing some research on the 536 AD event.
Justinian's plague hit at about that same time,
Right.
and it's thought that it may have had something to do with a comet or a great asteroid hitting the earth.
The Black Death of the Middle Ages, but even 100 years ago, there are people. In fact, the Spanish flu and World War I together helped change the direction of Christian thought regarding end times prophecy, because in the 19th century, even though there were wars, the American Civil War was a hugely, just deadly. I mean, the amount of dead from the Civil War, the Crimean War, the Boer War. I mean, there were wars all over the planet, and yet, generally, Christians were amillennial in their views, that things were just going to gradually get better and better and better until Jesus came back and established his millennial reign, or we were already in the millennial reign.
They were preterists in many ways. They believed that all these things had already been fulfilled, and we were living in a golden age because in the 19th century, everything did seem to be getting better and better. They were discovering all of these scientific things. Medicine was improving. They were starting to travel back and forth. The telephone came along after the telegraph. And then suddenly we get to the turn of the century, and there are cars. They've discovered how to refine oil into gasoline.
Flight.
It seemed like electricity was everywhere. It seemed like mankind had reached a golden age.
Right. And then suddenly you hit the First World War, which was a slaughterhouse, frankly. And you had then, on top of that, the Spanish influenza, which killed anywhere from 20 to 50 million people, on top of the millions of dead from World War I. And suddenly, just trying to synthesize that into an amillennial worldview was very difficult. It was about that time that Cyrus Scofield also published his study Bible, which really popularized dispensationalism.
Yes.
But we think that's actually more likely than this preterist or partial preterist view, because there are things that are prophesied in Revelation that clearly have not happened yet. And that's what we're looking at now. But imagine living 100 years ago and looking at the Spanish flu ravaging the world and thinking this must be the fourth rider.
Yes.
Well, there are very knowledgeable people who are looking at the situation coming out of China right now and saying this is tracking 1918 more closely than we would like to believe. But bear in mind, we live in a world with 4 times more people than 100 years ago, in a world where people can move about much more freely thanks to automobiles and intercontinental transoceanic air travel.
Yes, and we're not only interconnected, we are interdependent.
Right,
We are no
right.
longer independent as nations.
Right.
We've so sort of formed a web, it's like the Tholian web around us, literally, that is, it's poison.
We are
If-
economically dependent
Exactly.
on one another.
It's
Yes.
like this, sorry to mix metaphors, but if it's this huge game of dominoes where one domino like China falls, then suddenly the rest of the world economically falls as well. And even though we may never see this virus, really take off here in the United States, it's going to affect our economy adversely.
Yeah. So we don't mean to spread a spirit of fear. That's not our intention.
No, not at all. The Lord tells us these things in advance so that
Yes.
we know what's coming and we can prepare for it. And these are opportunities to share the gospel message. And it's a time to put in water and food and lots of Bibles, other books that can help to explain the Bible in your home. If you've got a backup generator or a generator of some kind so that you can continue to run electricity in your home, then you can keep things cool. You can cook things, but you can also show DVDs, because sometimes people learn better through that presentation instead of reading it. I just think that when someone comes to your door, if you can share a little bit to eat, a little water, and a little time, share Jesus with them, I think many people are going to be looking for that. Folks who today consider themselves woke and awake are sleeping, but
Yeah.
so is the church. And
Right.
now's the time for the church to wake up and get out there and realize we have to preach the gospel
Amen.
while we have time.
And that's one of the really encouraging stories coming out of China now. Ministries that work with the Chinese church are saying that pastors in Wuhan are encouraging their congregations now. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Trust in the Lord. Get out there and show the love of Christ to their neighbors who, not having the Holy Spirit in them, do have spirits of fear guiding their actions. This is a time when people will be listening. These are always opportunities for the church to show the sacrificial love of Jesus Christ and bring those who are afraid and alone into the kingdom. So be prepared, be not afraid. And remember, greater love has no man than this, that one is willing to lay down his life for his friends. We thank you for watching as we keep watch. This is Unraveling Revelation from Skywatch TV.